Good afternoon, everybody. It's time for our next speaker group. We have Michael Music and Kevin Kaminski. The title of their presentation is Logging Pitfalls and How to Abuse Them. Kevin Kaminski has been working at ReliaQuest for 4 years, currently as the Threat Management R&D Lead. He currently works researching the latest threat behaviors and tools in the wild, how they can be detected with enterprise technologies, and how the logs can be correlated in an SIEM solution to provide actionable intelligence. Michael Music is a USF computer science graduate and currently works on ReliaQuest's threat management team. He is currently researching automated threat emulation, red teaming, and how red teams can enhance an organization's security. Their subject: you cannot defend what you cannot see. A lack of proper logging from endpoints, servers, and security appliances is a widespread issue for companies in every industry. We will outline the most common logging gaps, mistakes, and misconfigurations that we've seen and how an attacker can abuse them. This can include identifying what exactly the blue team will not see and how knowledge of the shortcomings can allow attackers to evade the blue team or generally be more lazy and comfortable in their attack. We will also offer insight on how to solve these common problems from a high level. Give a warm BSides 2019 welcome to Michael Music and Kevin Kaminski.
All right. Hey, everyone. So, didn't expect this many people to show up, so that's cool. Seems like a very relevant topic. So what we're talking about is logging pitfalls. And when we talk about logging, we're talking about taking different devices in a network and the forwarding of those logs to some kind of centralized logging solution. So Kevin Kaminski, we're at ReliaQuest for a while. Music.
Yeah, so I've already got that great radio voice intro. But you guys hear me now? Cool. We got that great radio voice intro, but I'm Mike Music. I went to USF Computer Science. Been at RQ for about a little over 2 years now, so it's been a good time. I've gone through a few different roles, but now I'm generally red team and threat management.
So the origins of this talk, working at ReliaQuest, work with a lot of different companies, and we mainly work with the SIM technologies. So it's all about sending the logs to a centralized logging platform, and it's really what's pretty critical for modern security posture these days. It used to be you had to log into every single device you want to check out a log or investigate something. You got to log into your firewall, then your AV, look at the GUI, all that stuff. So the next generation of that is putting it all into one place and kind of logging platform like a SIM or data lake or something like that. So how many people work with those technologies, either SIMs or logging? There we go. Yeah, it's getting really common. And so we're finding that there's a lot of these common issues that people have been experiencing, which is reducing their visibility. So you guys might not like to hear what's going on, but we're going to kind of rip the band off and show you all the different things that we found failures and gaps and how to fix them. So this really began with working with companies, and they'd undergo pen tests or experience some internal breach or suspicious behavior, and the next question is, when this activity happens, is let me go find it, let me go research it, look at the logs. And you go in the SIM and you plug in the IPs and nothing comes back. And you're like, well, this guy's in there, he's doing these things. Why don't I have the visibility? I have all these tools. What am I supposed to be doing about this, and why is this happening? And we've seen companies are starting to now realize that this is a current issue, and they're starting to test the content, the alerts that are in these platforms. And so they're trying to test the SIM content, test out the alerts, and they're also finding that I ran an Nmap scan. I went onto a box, ran and scanned the whole network. Nothing shows up. And so all your scanning alerts now they're all useless. And so this is what this talks about, just addressing those different areas.
Cool. So that's the origin, and don't mind me jumping over and talking with Kevin here throughout the talk. But this will be the introduction. So most organizations that we talk to believe they have 100% visibility of their network, 100% visibility of every single endpoint. They know who's running what command. They know where the malware is being dropped. They think they see it all. And if you're in a very large environment, it may seem that way simply due to the sheer number of hosts that you are logging. But there's always something missing, and that's the point we're going to get to here. So warning: if you have a SIM and you really want to sleep well tonight, do not continue listening. So there's our cheesy disclaimer. In reality, there's massive common gaps in logging that go completely unreported for a variety of reasons, a variety of logging level problems that we're going to touch on here. But and honestly, it affects every organization. We see the spectrum of people who are kind of like, they just got a SIM, they're asking us how to integrate things, and we've seen people who've had a SIM for a long time, and this is not a new ball game for them. They've been around the block, and there's always something missing. So this is a quote. Actually, we can't name the individual who this came from because he didn't want us to, and he used a little bit different language in this. But he basically said, "The only people who know what they're logging know they're logging nothing," and that's probably the truth. So this is your logging level, your logging coverage expectation. This beautiful, block of cheese here. It looks great from the outside, but in reality, there's a lot of holes in it. So. What a great metaphor for your sim and your environment, right? Everybody's laughing, but it's true.
So we also want to throw out a disclaimer. If you're looking at these issues as we go through them, and you're like, that looks really familiar. This is so common that everyone, it affects everyone. So it's all anonymous data. So food for thought. If you have a SIM, that's a really good start. You're going to get all that correlation. But there are a few questions that for each log source that you're integrating that you really should be asking on a frequent basis. One is your log source deployed widely enough to actually cover the environment. So there are cases where you might be covering this network or this data center, but the other one doesn't have the same type of coverage. So you got to think, is this actually deployed everywhere? Is your log source even configured properly to detect the threat? So there's multiple different logging levels that give you different information, and are you enabling the right ones that are going to tell you when these attacks are occurring? And then, is your log source even capable of detecting this threat? So there's lots of different variability in quality with log sources and technologies. And there's some ways the attackers can bypass some, not others. So you got to be always thinking about how can attackers bypass this? Do I need to upgrade my solution, something like that? And we put an emphasis on frequently too, because your environments are always changing. There's new servers being stood up, taken down all the time. The company might make acquire some other companies or spin up remote offices, and there's always flux in your environment. So you have to keep constantly readdressing. Are we deploying these log sources in the right spots? Are we configuring them when we stand them up over time? So we're looking at the first one that we come to is the incomplete log source coverage, which I'm kind of talking about. And what this really entails is your log source actually placed everywhere that it should be to make sure that you're covering every part of your network? Because really with this, if you don't have your log source, if you own the technology but it's not in the right spots, then it doesn't matter. The logs are pretty much useless because you're not getting them, you're not covering that avenue of attack. So where we'll see this a lot is missing firewalls or IDS, and most of the time it could be at remote offices. Maybe you get this new company, you stand up some offices, and traffic's just not routed through a firewall, they're just wide open. And definitely for internal segments, if it even exists at all. So that you're not going to see any of that internal scanning or pivoting behaviors if you don't have any firewalls, or especially IDS, you don't really see that too much. Everyone usually gets the edge, but it's those remote pieces and the internal stuff that's usually pretty soft. Antivirus or any kind of EDR solutions like Carbon Black, CrowdStrike, are they deployed on every server? Some companies, you might have 70-80% of servers, but there's always there's always a few that don't get caught. And, is that even being inventoried anywhere? Some people don't even know how many servers they have, or how many have AV or how many are supposed to. And then there's just a complete lack of certain security appliances. So if you don't have an IDS or DLP or proxy, that's a huge log source coverage gap that needs to get filled. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on those attacks. And there's plenty of open source stuff out there. If you don't have IDS, get security onion, get some snare rolling on there. You can get some flows and Perl on there. So there's lots of different solutions out there that we'll get into as well.
So for each problem that we identify here, which I believe we have 4, we're going to talk about the abuses. And what this kind of means is there's kind of two sides of this. As a blue teamer, what are you not going to see? What kind of attacks are you commonly going to miss because because of this particular problem? And if you're a red teamer, if you do pen tests, you're kind of on the offensive side. This should just give you a little peace of mind and insight into what some of the environments we see typically look like and some of the problems we tend to find. So maybe it can make you a little lazier. I mean, the goal is to be silent, but you can at least rest at ease with some of these problems as a red teamer. So abuses. So this is the incorrect log source placement. So I'm going to go through all of these and let's see. So attackers can perform a ton of different attacks without fear of detection or prevention. So internal and inbound scans. So inbound scanning is kind of something that alerting on it's kind of something you don't see too often. But in terms of internal scans, when it comes to flat networks, and people who are either missing some type of internal firewall or network segmentation altogether, a common thing we see is that they simply can't see even the noisiest internal nmap scan. That's definitely an abuse. If you have your network, if you can input a firewall, or if you have you can catch your flow data from your firewalls, you can prevent this. C2 beacons and communication. So there's a lot of different ways that C2 works, but if you're flat out missing like a web proxy, or you're flat out missing an edge firewall for some reason, or an internal firewall, there's a good chance your C2s you're not going to see any C2 if you're missing an IDS, etc. So if you're an attacker, I mean, people are really focusing on finding ways to obfuscate their traffic, whether they're using Empire, Cobalt Strike, or some type of homebrew C2 post-exploit framework. In reality, if you're dealing with an advanced network, they might catch you. If you're using something custom, probably not, but for some of these people that are quite frankly just missing some common security appliances, it's not a huge worry. Exfiltration of data. So, I mean, if the company doesn't even have a web proxy set up and their web proxy isn't catching the right fields, they're not going to be able to see you making post requests if you're doing some simple like HTTP post exfil, something like that. So you can, as a red teamer, you can rest easy knowing that there's a good chance that those devices don't exist. They're probably not going to catch you. In malware hacking tools, and when I say hacking tools, I'm kind of referring to well-known hacking scripts like PowerShell scripts, for example, and generally suspicious process behavior. So if you do not have your log sources kind of correctly placed, or your log sources are just missing in general, you're going to miss a lot of this stuff. So it's not uncommon to see, for example, AV just flat out not being on a box, so they can't get the visibility. You drop a piece of malware, it doesn't even have to be sophisticated. It's not going to get caught. So pretty simple stuff there.
So some of the fixes that we're thinking about for some of these problems. So if you don't have firewalls at certain locations, just trying to make sure that all those route through at least something that's going to put some detection on that traffic. Whether it's an IDS or a proxy or firewall. You can also, for internal segmentation, employ firewalls there. If you don't have internal segmentation, at least getting the flow logs from those routers and switches, because those are appliances you own, and that's going to give you really good visibility on that internal activity and movement. You want to track actually where your AV is getting installed, and you can look at the known host counts in the consoles or in the SIM. Just look at all the different devices that are reporting in, and just try to compare that with what's in your environment. And just constantly keep cycling on that process to make sure that everything is it's got everything that it needs. And when you're provisioning those new systems, you're rolling out new desktops or servers, and include that in the process to get that installed by default, so you're not going after the fact and trying to hunt down where you have all these gaps. And then, just simply consider purchasing additional appliances. Like I said, there's a lot of open source tools that you can also deploy in the network, just to make sure that you get that coverage. So, nothing too complicated there. I mean, it's really just put your log sources in the right spot, if you have them. Going on to number 2, so you have the technologies, they're in the right spot, but they're not sending to the SIM. We see this a lot too. You'll have people deploying out new firewalls and new technologies, and they'll just forget to send it, or it's sending to the wrong IP address and moved it, and just not getting there. So really, that's also just kind of a waste of potential for the log source. You're not getting that visibility, even though you have that coverage. So it may still be blocking, it may still be doing those different activities, but you're not going to see any of that or see the allowed stuff. So your correlation is not going to be complete in your SIM tool if you're not getting those logs in there, and then your incident analysis, when your analysts go in there, they're not going to be able to see the activity that's going on. So some examples, so in critical assets, we've pretty much seen it all. Domain controllers not logging, and that's a whole section of your domain where you just have all kinds of domain admin, privilege escalation, group membership authentications that you're just missing in your environment. That's just ripe for exploitation there. And firewalls, IDS, companies sometimes have hundreds of firewalls, and it's kind of hard to keep track of everything that's logged and when that stuff fails. So it's something that we see a lot of. Virtual infrastructure, not the same as the physical devices. So you might have a really good golden image for your workstations or desktops, but what about your VDIs? We've seen it before where sometimes the VDIs aren't running AV, very basic, sometimes older versions of Windows, and you want to make sure that those also are logged in coverage, because that's just another remote attack vector. And then sometimes not forwarding it to the logging platform is intentional, because the logging platform can't support that log source. It's very high volume. Typically we'll see DNS. Not too many people log DNS. And also with firewalls, because you have all that firewall traffic accepts, it can be pretty heavy on the system. So that's another big gap that we commonly see.
All right, so back to the abuses here. These are some of the attacks that can happen, and just some of the things that we see. I might even tell a couple examples that we've seen in the wild. So, let's just say, for example, your DC isn't logging, which I hope all of your DCs are logging. No matter the size of your organization, it's pretty critical. But lo and behold, we've seen plenty of instances where domain controllers are not logging. As crazy as that is. And in that case, you're going to be missing a lot of Windows brute force attacks. It's unlikely that you're logging at the Windows host level, and kudos to you if you are. And if you're flat out missing a few DCs and there's some type of brute force activity going on in that domain, you're probably going to miss it. Other things like just general domain enumeration techniques, for example, using Bloodhound, you're going to flat out miss that if you're not logging your DCs. Different privilege escalation methods. I mean, if you're not logging DCs and somebody happens to get DA and hops on that box and they somehow escalate privileges or they somehow start dumping something. I mean, if you're not logging that DC, that's pretty bad. Linux activity. This is actually a pretty interesting one. I mean, there's a lot of value in the different Linux servers that exist out there, and a lot of different appliances and software that run on them. And what we commonly see is that people kind of take their Linux boxes lightly and don't log them as well as they would, or don't have the expected logging levels that they would on a normal Windows box. So on their DCs, they're like, hey, we see whenever a scheduled task is created. We see whenever a user logs on. We see whenever a reg key is modified. We can see the individual PowerShell commands running, but they can't see a single command being run on some of their critical Linux servers. They're just flat out. It's not that logging technically isn't there, because Linux does have some logging by default, although there's ways to kind of upgrade that. I think we'll talk about that. But they're just not forwarding the logs because they just never saw the value, or they never considered it. So you're going to miss all kinds of stuff there, like pseudo account compromises, hash dumping, different persistence techniques. And then virtual infrastructure, attackers targeting virtual infrastructure, they can just be a bit more noisy. So we've seen instances where, for example, like the laptops, the endpoints that you'll get provisioned as a normal on-prem user, the image is a lot different than the VDI infrastructure that remote employees or contractors would be working with. For example, say you pop an account and that's a remote contractor's account. They can basically spin up a VDI and get right in your network. Well, it's quite likely that VDI is not logging to the platform like a normal endpoint would be. And in that case, as an attacker, I mean, you can be pretty noisy and get away with it, so just food for thought. And DNS beaconing and exfiltration become a much bigger option whenever just different things aren't, forwarding to the SIM. For example, DNS logs. There is a good chance that DNS is being logged, and if it's being logged, they might not even have any type of alerting on it. So, that makes it so getting caught DNS beaconing is, much less likely. And B, it makes it so even if they are logging it, the analysis happens, or analysis might not even exist if they're not logging. So that becomes a bit of a problem. And so the fix. Let's go through some of these fixes. So audit your inventory or your CMDB, and compare with the counts of logging devices in the SIM. So this is something we always do with the organizations we would deal with. We say, hey, so we're going to go in your SIM. We're basically going to look per log source type. We're going to look at all the different hosts reporting, and we're going to basically get a unique count of all the different host names, IPs that are reporting. And what you guys need to do is you need to take this data and map it to, whatever your asset inventory is and compare the two, because they need to be pretty darn identical. Add log configuration in the device provisioning process, especially point them towards some type of central log aggregation server, like a syslog server, or I think we have down here UseWef. Just make that part of your standard gold image for your endpoints, for your Linux servers, for your Windows servers, Just make a standard. Make sure it's logging and pointing to a host that, you can, like a syslog server or something. And for high volume logs, filter out irrelevant event types. So if you're scared of logging, different firewall logs or different types of data, DNS data or something, simply because it's too high volume, it's going to put you over that EPS threshold or something. Just try to see if you can trim it down a bit so you can at least get some visibility in there for your analysts and for your correlation. And for Linux, deploy and update syslog configs on all servers with your automation tools. So that is pretty much tying in with the add log configuration and device provisioning process. But really value your Linux servers. Don't just, I mean, the endpoint is kind of the new perimeter, but, you know, value your Linux servers, please.
All right, so if you're out there, you're like, all right, you know, I got the coverage, you know, I have everything logged into the SIM or some kind of central, you know, syslog aggregator or something like that. Then you have our third pitfall, which is improperly configured logging levels. So a lot of times the default configs on these devices, you know, you plug in an IP address, it sends logs to the SIM. A lot of times that's not the right logging level that you want. It might just be logging system level garbage that's not anything related to security. And you need to go back in, and sometimes there's really delicate configs that you have to do to get the right events that you want. I mean, if you don't have the right logging levels, basically you're not using the log source to the fullest potential. Again, it's doing the actions, but you're not getting that visibility. So, see this a ton with you know, especially Windows. So Windows, as you know, there's tons of different logging options in there. There's a lot of different event IDs. You know, which ones are you supposed to log? You know, by default, you know, a lot of people log their domain controller logs. That's great, but on the endpoint, a lot of people don't really take that extra step to log a lot of the workstations or some of the server logs. You know, by default, if you turn it on, it's got all the object access crap, and like it blows up the EPS because there's a lot of, you know, kind of not really relevant information that it logs by default. So a lot of people just turn it off. But there's a lot of low volume event IDs in there that you can configure, like very specific registry keys, scheduled tasks, that you can log on a lot more workstations or hosts. And you know, that's going to catch a lot of different attacker persistent activity. And then there's also process creation. So if you're logging that event, there's a separate config for command line auditing, which gives you the whole full, you know, commands, the parameters that they're actually running. Otherwise, without that, you just get, you know, somewhere in PowerShell, but you don't actually know what they're running or, you know, what kind of arguments they're feeding in. So that's a big gap, kind of doing there's analysis there. PowerShell. So a lot of people don't log PowerShell, or if they do, you know, or they rely on PowerShell detection, it's with, you know, an EDR tool or with the process creation events. But those aren't going to give you the visibility into what's actually going on inside the PowerShell script. You're going to get that PowerShell ran, maybe that it called another process, but without the native PowerShell logging in Windows, you're not going to see what different commands, what functions are running, what's the input-output. A lot of Linux activity, so Linux will log, you know, authentications, kind of some group user management stuff by default, but you're not seeing the command line history, you're not seeing any kind of like executions or syscalls, and you're not seeing any kind of file modifications. So, and everyone knows like the Linux logs really aren't that great to begin with. It's very non-standard and just kind of gives you like sentences to work on, so it's not even it's difficult to parse, difficult to use. And web proxies, so SSL decryption, you know, not really logging level, but it's something that's you're not going to get that visibility into that web traffic that will allow you to detect, you know, different types like C2 or exfil or other types of things. And for EDR as well, there's a lot of EDR tools. You know, they come bundled with all these different signatures like Carbon Black or CrowdStrike. You know, maybe they have like 100 signatures. Well, the regular antivirus they have like, you know, thousands, tens of thousands of signatures. So EDR does more like behavioral based with different processes, but you know, the problem is that there's still so much attackers can do that we found that a lot of the EDR tools, you know, there's really big gaps in their signature base, and it kind of relies on you, especially with like Carbon Black, to like make a lot of those signatures, you know, for your own environment, and it can be kind of difficult to keep up with that, especially with all the AV signatures.
Cool. So more abuse here, which is what everybody wants. So attackers can compromise your Windows and Linux hosts kind of undetected if you don't have your host, you know, your logging appropriately configured. So, for example, if you just decided to turn off all the logging on your Windows boxes and your endpoints, you're probably not going to see your different kind of, you know, file share accesses, your service installs, things that would be indicative of pivoting, for example, PSexec pivoting. You're probably not going to see your registry modifications unless you have your logging specifically configured to look at key registry keys. Something we typically give, you know, clients of ours and organizations we work with. We basically hand them this massive list of registry keys, and we say, hey, this is associated with, you know, different malicious activity. You guys probably need to be looking at this, but that's pretty rare to see people monitoring that stuff right off the bat. And persistence in general. I mean, if you're using general Windows persistence methods like, let's just say scheduled tasks or reg key mods or something, you're probably not going to see that unless you have your host logging configured properly. And Blue Team cannot analyze the suspicious command line arguments. So it's not uncommon for some type of pen test to happen, and for somebody to come to us and say, hey, this command was ran on this box. Do you guys see it? And we go and we look at all their process creations, and lo and behold, they have it logging. They have their 4688s coming into the sim just fine, but it wasn't configured properly to see the different command line arguments. So you really can't see anything other than PowerShell.exe was launched. It's not really that useful. Can use known, powerful, and easy hacking tools without fear of detection. So we kind of touched on this twice now. But if you don't have your PowerShell script block logging, or you don't have some EDR tool configured properly to actually capture the PowerShell script, or even the PowerShell commands being run, you're going to miss a lot of pretty simple detect stuff. And C2 channels with HTTPS can bypass proxy detection. So if your web proxy isn't configured for SSL decryption, you're going to miss a lot of the HTTP data that's A, could be used for correlation, and B, could be used for analysis. And when I say correlation, I mean alerting. So if I'm using a C2 framework where I'm exfilling data, like using like post requests or something, you're not going to be able to basically write comment or write alerts and say, hey, is this person posting to basement? You know, I personally think that you should know that's happening in your environment. Basic malware tools that can be missed by EDR. So this is kind of an odd one. So EDR out of the box, I'm not a huge EDR, I guess, expert, but I've done more than enough testing to know some of the pitfalls here. The configuration options that come right out of the box with some of these tools sometimes don't catch really, really common hacking tools, really common malware. Even stuff that's not really obfuscated or stuff that's just right out of the box. There have been many times where I have different VMs where I'm testing payloads for campaigns with all kinds of ABE on it, and then I'll drop that on an EDR box, and the EDR box won't even flag whenever it runs. I'm talking simple stuff, so you have to have your configuration up to snuff. So the fix for the improperly configured logging modes. Enable logging for important system events, so scheduled tasks, service installs, registry mods, for critical ones, so run ones, IFEO, stuff like that. Enable your script block or your module PowerShell logging, so you want to be able to see the actual PowerShell script being run, the actual commands being run, so that's highly valuable. Enable logging of command line history and file mods with audit or OS query, so with Linux you can kind of get a view, not necessarily into what the actual script that's being run, actually, for example, .sh script is being run on the Linux box, but you can at least see the system calls that it's making the audit D. And enable SSL interception on web proxies. So that's not always something that can realistically happen, but if it is something that you can do with your web proxy and something you can handle, you know, computationally with that device, then it's incredibly valuable for analysis and for correlation.
Well, so now, if you're like, I got my log sources, they're properly placed everywhere, and I'm logging them properly, then the next one is your log source even capable to detect, you know, some of the attacks that we're seeing? And in some cases, you know, it falls kind of short, which, yeah, no functionality to detect certain activities. So, you know, obviously you're looking at your signature-based IDS AV, very easy for attackers to modify the tools to bypass those signatures. So, I mean, they're still very valuable to have just to catch the default stuff, but it's not going to stop everything. Certain firewalls don't, you know, do the header inspection to even know what protocol is running on that traffic. You know, it makes it really easy for tunneling. You're not going to know so if someone's running something on uncommon ports or not. Linux default logs are not very detailed. Like I said, they don't really give you a lot of details to work with. It kind of just spits out a sentence. Some of them don't even tell you what the user was who was actually performing the activities. So it's not very detailed there. If you're trying to log bash history, you can easily just turn that off, or, you know, wipe the file or something like that. So that's not really very reliable, and it's not really going to tell you, like the PowerShell, the script log. It's not going to tell you what actually runs inside the command. So if you open up a text terminal and you know, type in like a bash script, and put all your commands in there and just run that, it's just going to show up as like just some script was run. So it's not really the most, you know, useful thing if you can just easily chuck that into a script. And like I said before, EDR process logs, you can't view what's actually going on inside that PowerShell script, so it's also not very useful.
So on to the abuse. So what are you going to miss just simply due to lack of detecting capability? Custom tools that bypass just signature-based AV or IDS. That one's pretty self-explanatory. The use of non-standard ports for C2 connections or tunnel over existing protocols. So this is one thing that you know, we see pretty commonly. So let's just say you're blocking outbound connections to destination port 22 because you don't want people doing outbound SSH. Well, if you don't have a protocol-aware firewall, it's going to be pretty difficult for you to, say, alert on somebody SSHing or to like the SSH server hosted on port 443, you know, or somebody, you know, hosting an FTP server up there on port 8080. FTPing out to port 88 if you don't have an application-aware firewall. You're not going to be able to see that. So as an attacker, that could be an exfil method, C2 method. Linux and PowerShell command execution that's obscured by running them under benign script names. So, like we kind of said earlier with auditd, OS query, just enabling your PowerShell logging. Quite frankly, there's just some limitations in terms of logging, especially when it comes to Linux for different scripts. So just know that that kind of detection capability just doesn't exist sometimes. And then PowerShell auto completing parameters. There's a lot of stuff to look into PowerShell logging in terms of all the odd things and the different aliases that it has for different commandlets and kind of auto correcting and auto completing that you do for this stuff. So you kind of have to be careful about writing your regular expressions whenever it comes to the detection capability of PowerShell, with sims and correlation or logic. And so the fix. So you got to invest in behavioral-based tools that tools or rely on detection further down the kill chain. So ultimately, you may have a tool that, for example, maybe your firewall is not protocol aware. Well, maybe you can try and catch the attacker that may be doing something further along the kill chain, or maybe you have an EDR tool that can maybe catch them doing something else. Purchase firewalls with protocol awareness. We kind of touched on that earlier. If you're just missing, this security appliance, if you can, if your budget allows for it, purchase it. If your budget allows for it, maybe upgrade your firewall, looking at getting some of this protocol aware. Enable auditd to capture Linux command syscalls. We touched on that a couple times now. PowerShell script block or module logging to actually capture the scripts being run. Once again, this is something that's almost invaluable for your analysis, especially with how big of an attack vector PowerShell is nowadays. It'll absolutely kill the pen testers that are using Empire, so just keep that in mind. And ensure your PowerShell detection signatures look for the correct, partial matches. Ensure that you at least have a couple, maybe, for example, maybe you ran some obfuscated PowerShell in your network to test it. Just make sure your regex is correct. Make sure whenever you're writing signatures in your SIM or your EDR tool or something that all of your regular expressions are accounting for the different variations in PowerShell, because it's just flat out a capability limitation with the tool or customizability with the tool.
Cool. So, talked about a lot of things in regards to logging, and the real goal of this talk is to kind of give awareness for all these different, logging pitfalls, logging mistakes that we've seen in different companies, and can really help benefit everyone to go back to their organizations and go see if this is the case there and how to fix it. So we really want to use this as kind of like a checklist for people to think about, when they go back, are my log sources, they're feeding into the SIM just fine, but are they covering everywhere that, my organization is? The ones that are out there that aren't feeding in, is everything feeding in? Try to get those counts, look up in the SIM, compare that with your inventory, looking at the logging levels. So go take a look in the log platform, go see what are the event types that I'm receiving. Is this what's supposed to come out of that log source? And then, potentially look into, upgrading or, modifying some signatures to kind of compensate for any kind of detection gaps. So then the real question for, you guys for takeaways, how can you proactively discover that these issues are going on in your environment? Because you're going to go home, you're going to go back to your organizations, and how are you going to be able to get the organization to constantly, evaluate this and make sure that the logging is giving you guys good coverage? All
right. So as many of you individuals might have guessed, the solution is testing, and more testings. And so I'm just going to go through a little highlight of, what I feel like the testing protocol should look like, what we suggest, and I guess kind of what we typically see and how this typically goes. So testing, I'm going to go through, kind of what we think it should look like, but let me tell you what we typically see. How this typically works is it's not very proactive. Nobody tests to see, how their logging levels are, if things are actually logging, and what all is actually logging, and until a pen test happens and they don't catch something. And sometimes a pen test happens, they catch it fine, and they still don't worry about their logging levels. And that's quite frankly not good. Typically, something won't trigger. They'll come to us and they'll say, hey, why didn't this trigger? We'll then tell you, hey, was it logging? No, it wasn't logging. They say, hey, we need to test it, and we're all on board. They then go on their let's just say it's a brute force rule. They go on their own personal Windows box, and they start spamming logins against their domain controller. It fires, and they're good. Testing's done. That's not really how it should be done. What if your other domain controllers aren't logging? Did you run an Nmap scan? Can you even see an Nmap scan in your environment? What you need to do to develop a good testing platform to verify this stuff is create a team of internal testers with an offensive mindset. So find individuals that are willing to test, that are aware of these types of problems, preferably somebody with some type of SIM experience and maybe some type of offensive experience, although that's not really a necessity. And just Don't completely devote them to them, obviously, unless you have the time to, but make sure this is a pretty prime directive for them. Set up basic infrastructure. So your attack machine should not be your personal Windows endpoint. You should probably have some type of dedicated Kali box, maybe even a Kali VM on your local machine, but just spin up some type of offensive Linux distro somewhere in your environment and use that as your attacker. So you need to spin up victim host. I don't think that your buddy across the hall's Windows box is your appropriate victim host, nor is your domain controller. And the odds of you getting the credentials provision for your domain controller to actually accurately test is going to be pretty low unless your DAs are going to let you make scheduled tasks in your DCs, which is very unlikely. So spin up your Windows boxes, spin up your Linux boxes. They need to be your gold standard image, and you need to attack them with an actual dedicated attack host. Develop a detailed testing plan. Don't just wait until something happens. Be proactive. Get all of the different use cases you want to test, common attack methods, and go through them in a cyclical, organized manner until you can at least confirm one path sensor to the SIM works. And take it slow. Don't try and rush it. Try to make it as dispersed as possible so you can test all the different sensors in your environment. Just take it slow. Don't rush it. We typically see people rush it because it's usually a reactive thing rather than a proactive thing. But if you take it proactive, it's a little easier to take it slow. So, questions? I don't know. Is there? Are you aware of one? I don't think we've approached that problem yet. But yeah, we definitely will. We definitely will now. Yeah, definitely. Cool stuff.
Yeah, we'll usually see like anywhere from like 30, 90 days of like the hot warm storage off the SIM, and then usually it goes back for like a year, like a cold storage. It kind of depends on your compliance too. We've seen some customers store like 7, 10 years. Just depends if you got the budget for that. But, yeah.
Oh, nobody else can hear me? Oops. Well, apologies. I'm sure this is very insightful, but ultimately I was saying that if you have like an EPS limit and you're looking at your like local host logs, what should you look at logging? I would start with your AV. I would start with your ER. I would then look at, critical Windows logs, scheduled task creations. I would even look at sysmon, see if you can cut out a lot of the junk in sysmon, find some like config that suits your needs and keeps your EPS low, but still allows you to like look at maybe some different process creations and, those types of events. Like I would start there.
So yeah, I mean, we do see that a lot with customers. They're very concerned about their EPS, their licensing, can't even store enough. So we found there's actually a lot of different like unnecessary events that you can filter out to cut down on your EPS. So we've seen, some people log like VMware logs, and that stuff is super noisy. It takes a huge chunk of your EPS, and there's, specific events that you might not care about, like low-level system-level logging, for your IDS firewall. Like it's all out there, and it could be turned on. So what we usually do is we'll do an analysis on the SIM. We'll take all the different event names per log source type and see what's actually relevant to security, what do we actually need to store, and then a lot of the SIMs or on the devices themselves, you can actually filter those out before they hit your license. So that's generally what we recommend. We can usually cut it down like 10 to 30%, just getting rid of stuff that's not security related or does not need to be stored. And Windows events in particular, like on the workstation, authentications are just going to blow that up all day. But targeted registry key mods like the run once keys, people making scheduled tasks, different service installations, those types of events. Those aren't going to be happening every day. Even if you've got like thousands of workstations, the EPS on that should be pretty minimal, where you can log those key event IDs and just drop everything else. So that should be pretty good.
Ultimately, it depends on your environment, though. I mean, for example, we've seen customers where, they're fully capable of logging PowerShell despite having a lower EPS because nobody in their environment, quite frankly, uses PowerShell. We've seen environments where their environment's so laden with engineering